Hello guys, welcome back to the MMASucka Podcast. My name's Frazer Krohn, and let's jump straight into it. UFC 292. Phenomenal night of fights. I thought they were all on the most part really good. I know we had a lot of decisions. We had some finishes early on the card, but overall, I think there's plenty of headlines. Going to be plenty of content on MMASucka.com, so be sure to check that out. But there's pretty much. We need to discuss the main card. The Bautista Blackshear fight is what it is. I don't think it was a bad decision. That one really, that was Cody Garbrandt's spot on the main card, so we won't be discussing that in too much detail. But I thought, we're going to work from sort of bottom to top, as it were, and we're going to finish off on the main event, which was I think the fight that stole all the headlines, and rightfully so. The first fight I really want to talk about is the Brad Katona versus Cody Gibson fight. I thought that rightfully got fight of the night, and Brad Katona wins, breaks records to become the first person to win the Ultimate Fighter twice. He obviously won it the first time round at featherweight back in 2018. He beat Jay Cuccinello, who has had some sort of a career afterwards, fighting on YouTuber boxing, as it influenced the boxing, as it were. But if you look at the guys that Brad Katona fought, he beat Matthew Lopez by unanimous decision in 2018. Then he lost to Merab by decision. Then he lost to, at the time, an undefeated Hunter Azure by unanimous decision. These are two tough guys, especially Merab, who after that fight with Brad Katona, he's undefeated. He went on to beat Casey Kenny, Gustavo Lopez, John Dodson, Stamen, Marlon Moraes, Jose Aldo, and of course Petr Yan last time out. It did feel, you've got some guys and girls in the UFC that are on huge losing streaks. It did feel quite harsh to cut Brad Katona, but he went away, kind of licked his wounds, competed on. It's not even, he didn't even compete on the sort of regional circuit. He didn't drop down a huge level. He went and fought for Brave. He went and fought for Brave, and he went 4-0 in Brave with just a single finish, and he won the bantamweight championship. He took on Cody Gibson this weekend at UFC 292, and I think it was just, when he found his rhythm, when he found his range. Cody Gibson's a big guy for the weight class. He took over the fight, and I think it was the dog in Brad Katona that won in this fight. Likewise, in the Kurt Holobar versus Austin Hubbard fight for the lightweight final of Tough, Kurt Holobar obviously won by triangle choke. Austin Hubbard, I thought Austin Hubbard was a far better fighter going into it. I think, both these guys were on sort of team veteran, as it were. Holobar picks up his first win in the UFC. He did. This is a guy for me that did deserve to get cut. He fought and lost he fought and lost 3 times under the UFC banner previously, of which 2 came via finish. He licked his wounds, he came back, and he's now the Ultimate Fighter. He called out Paddy the Baddy. Never going to get that fight, I don't think. But it was a really good finish. He was chaining together his submissions really, really well. At one point he had an armbar, then he obviously finished things with the arm triangle choke. Austin Hubbard, I wouldn't be surprised to actually see him still get a UFC contract off the back of this, coming on sort of like a late notice if someone pulls out, because he's a solid fighter. Gregory Rodriguez put on a really, it only lasted 1:43, and he kind of scaled back his brutish brawler style to get a really good finish. And I think he was really unlucky not to get a performance of the night bonus. But he finished Dennis Chulilin by elbows on the ground, and it just looked like I don't want to say standard ground and a pound elbow, but it did. But he threw with such power that he knocked his opponent out. And Gregory Rodriguez, after that knockout loss last time out to Bruno Ferreira, returns. He returns and he's back in the win column. And there's not a person, I don't think, that watches mixed martial arts that wouldn't tune in for a Gregory Rodriguez fight. But then we start to get the real household names, the real sort of, the fighters that featured in the press conferences, the fighters that, were on Tough and whatnot. The fighters that have been around for a far longer time. We had Chris Weidman returning after almost, I think it was a 2-year layout due to that broken leg against Uriah Hall. And he didn't look great. What I would say is that Brad Tavares fought really, really, for the official decision. Brad Tavares wins the fight via unanimous decision, 30-27 on all 3 scorecards. It was a leg kicking for Brad Tavares that did it, and ironically, it's the leg kicking to the lead leg, the left leg of Chris Weidman that really won Brad Tavares this fight, rather than kicking the previously injured right leg. He was just brutal with it. We're going to talk about leg kicking again. We're going to discuss the Ian Garry fight, but it was just a brutal display of precision striking by Brad Tavares. I thought he did really well. I thought Chris Weidman, he was shooting him for these takedowns. He's not actually credited with a takedown for the entire fight. He's none for 8 on that fight. None for 8 on the official UFC stats. But the difficult thing for me is that he wasn't setting the strikes up at all. It didn't seem as if he was attempting to put anything in the face of Brad Tavares before hitting him. Before shooting for the takedown. And I don't know. It's almost like the win for Chris Weidman was just to get back in there and to compete again, which was a real shame, because he did. He still speaks. And well, he spoke before this fight about still being the middleweight champion one day. That at the moment seems as far away as it ever has for Chris Weidman, even, taking into consideration that he had the leg break previously. What I would say for Chris Weidman is that it's phenomenal to have seen him back in there competing at the highest level. Brad Tavares is a solid competitor. He's been, top of the tree for a countless number of years. He made his debut. Let me just double check. He made his debut back in 2010, and he's just been competing against a who's who of guys: Lorenzo Larkin, Yoel Romero, Tim Bosch, Nate Marquardt, Rob Whittaker, the late great Elias Theodorou. Let's not forget, he went 5 rounds with Israel Adesanya. He fought Edmund Shabazian when he was a killer. He's got a 3-round loss to Dricus du Plessis. And he just took Chris Weidman apart. And the most concerning thing for me is that, Chris was trying to sort of will himself into getting into that firefight and really, biting down on the mouthpiece. But after the fight, we saw that it was his right leg, the previously injured leg, that was heavily strapped up. So that's a worry. And, Dana White came out in the post-fight press conference and said he wants Chris Weidman to retire. And I wouldn't be against that at all. I think I've got no inside information on this at all, but I believe that Chris Weidman would have put the gloves down had he won the fight this past Saturday at UFC 292. He's got nothing left to prove. He's a former middleweight champion multiple time. He beat Anderson Silva twice. He's beaten essentially a who's who of the old guard at middleweight. That was a legendary run that he went on. He beat Damian Maia, he beat Martin Munoz, he stopped Anderson Silva's winning streak, and then he beat him, in the fight after that. He beat Lyoto Machida. He finished TRT Vitor Belfort in the first round. Then the losses came: Rockhold, Romero, Mousasi. He bounced back against Gastelum, but then he lost to Jacare, Dominic Reyes, beat Akhmedov. Obviously, last time out, lost to Uriah Hall, and now he's lost to Brad Tavares. I don't want to see Chris Weidman taking any more damage, because he has taken a lot of damage in his career. That Rockhold fight, finished that flying knee from Yoel Romero, the strange finish, the knee finish by Gegard. I think he was dropped against Calvin Gastelum. he was, badly beaten by Jacare, badly knocked out by Dominic Reyes. He, of course, then broke his leg against Uriah Hall, and Brad Tavares did some serious damage to both his left and, evidently his right leg in this one as well. I want to see Chris Weidman say, look, I've got nothing left to prove, and hang the gloves up. Where does he sit in the all-time middleweight rankings? Unfortunately, he's not going to be in the GOAT conversation. But in my opinion, he sits top 10 middleweights of all time. There's certainly a debate there to be had. But at the moment, I just want to see him, spend some time with his family and away from the sport and away from taking these constant licks off guys. I don't want to see him become like a gatekeeper or a stepping stone anymore. Not that that's what Brad Tavares saw him as, but it was just rough to see. But it was nice to see Brad Tavares get back in the win column, especially, he reps Hawaii and the travesties that are going on in Hawaii with the fires at the moment. It's nice to see him sort of being able to sort of get one in for the Hawaiians. The opening fight of the main card now, Marlon Chito Vera, just he just did what he had to do. It was an instantly forgettable fight between Marlon Vera and Pedro Munoz. I didn't think that Chito would finish Pedro Munoz, but he did certainly need to bounce back after that devastating loss I say devastating, it's pretty dominant loss to Corey Sandhagen last time out. He's badly dominated in that one and didn't really seem to ever get going in that one. This one, obviously a 3-round fight, his first 3-round fight. He since he fought Frankie Edgar, he beat Rob Font over 5 rounds, beat Dominic Cruz in the main event, and lost to Corey Sandhagen over 5 rounds. He had to get going early, and that first round was a tight round. And just going to pull up the stats now. He did outland Pedro Munoz by a single strike, 39-38. Then he began to take over, and in that final round, he really, his output, he threw 101 strikes. Yes, he only landed 53 of them, but his output was far better. His significant strike accuracy across all 3 rounds was far better than Pedro Munoz's as well. And with that win, it potentially sets up a title fight as a result of what happened in the main event. But as far as the fight itself is concerned, it's instantly forgettable. Then, like I said, we had the Bautista Blackshear fight. I'm not going to touch on that at all, really. It's not the fight that we wanted to see. We wanted to see Cody Garbrandt back in there, and whether Mario Bautista looks to, get that one back with Cody, because that was a big fight for him. But then it was a sort of the featured fight on the main card for me. It was Ian Garry versus Neil Magny. Of course, Neil Magny stepping in to take this one on fairly short notice, but not terribly short notice. It was supposed to be Ian Garry taking on Jeff Neal. Neil Magny stepped in when Jeff Neal had to pull out and was comprehensively picked apart, taken apart, and for want of a better word, bullied in there. He was outclassed. He was embarrassed. I can't think of enough words for what happened in that Ian Garry versus Neil Magny fight. The two had a lot of heat, at the press conference and during the fight as well. Ian Garry and Neil Magny clearly don't like each other. But if we just look at the stats for this fight, Ian Garry outlanded Neil Magny 111-51 on total strikes, 91-27 on significant strikes. Ian Garry was perfect. He landed 43 of 43 leg kicks, according to UFC stats. 43 of 43. He ate Neil Magny's legs up and probably could have finished him with leg kicks, but he showed a real maturity. He showed a real maturity in this fight of not rushing things. When he had Neil Magny hurt, he picked him off against the cage. He could have easily, leg kicked him, rushed in, finished things. He didn't. He stepped back. He had a look. He went back. He went back in. He stepped back. He had a look. He landed a couple of uppercuts. He tried that flying knee. Took him down. I think that was in the final round. He's credited with a takedown a couple of takedowns in the final round. Let me just pull this up. Yeah, so he's credited with a takedown in the first round. I don't really remember. an awful lot about, but he's credited with that takedown in the final round as well. But it was an annihilation from Ian Garry. A phenomenal performance, and he just gets it. For me, Neil Magny was almost caught in the headlights of the Ian Garry show. This is a 25-year-old kid that he's heading into the fight, he was 5-0 in the UFC. He's now 6-0 in the UFC. Neil Magny doesn't win every single fight he's in, don't get me wrong. But how many times has Neil Magny had a scorecard of 30-26, 30-26, and 30-24? David Ginsberg gave it essentially 3 10-8 rounds in favor of Ian Garry. That speaks volumes, absolute volumes, as to how dominant Ian Garry was in this fight. And it's a massive, massive step up in competition for him. You know, if we look at Neil Magny's last decision loss, it's to Michael Chiesa, over 5 rounds, 49-46, 49-46, 49-46. The decision loss is sort of next decision loss after that. I mean, back in 2013, so it's kind of irrelevant. If he loses, he gets finished. Ian Garry didn't finish him. He just picked him apart for 15 minutes. But for me, like I say, I think Magny got caught in the Ian Garry headlights. He got sort of caught up in the emotion of the fight. But Ian Garry kind of gets it. Yes, I don't think he had it in the back of his mind, I'm going to flip off Neil Magny to create a viral moment, but that's exactly what it did. He flipped him off. I think it was the end of the second round. Then he had that little thing at the end of the final round. These guys don't like each other, but Ian Garry gets the game. He gets the viral moment sort of thing, as it were. And it's just a phenomenal performance. He called out Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. I can see that happening. I just pull up the rankings here. I can see that happening. He probably breaks into the top 10, like he alluded to. With that win, he was ranked 13. Neil Magny was ranked 11. He probably breaks into the top 10, but you've got a lot of, it's a tough division to sort of not even break into. It's a tough division to shine in. You've got Leon Edwards, Kamaru Usman, Colby Covington, Bilal Muhammad, Hamzat Chimaev, kind of all at the top of the tree, as it were. And then you've got Gilbert Burns, Shavkat Rakhmonov, Stephen Thompson, and Jeff Neal, kind of, that 5 to 8 range. Sean Brady, Vicente Luque, Neil Magny, and Kevin Holland. And then you've got, Jack Della Maddalena, who's scheduled to fight Kevin Holland, of course. I can't remember, September or November. For me, I think the Stephen Thompson call out was a really sensible, clever call out from Ian Garry, and I think he probably gets that fight. But an absolute phenomenal performance. And talking about phenomenal performances, I haven't seen domination like I saw Zhang Weili dominate Amanda Lemos in a long time in a title fight across 5 rounds. I put on Twitter today, you can follow me at Frazer Krohn MMA. I just dropped a few thoughts on the fight itself. I cannot remember a performance, when I think of performances of champions that have dominated their competitors or competitors that have dominated champions over 5 rounds without actually getting a finish, there's only a few names that ever come to mind. It's your Max Holloway over Brian Ortega. It's your Cody Garbrandt versus Dominic Cruz. Israel Adesanya multiple times. Got Amanda Nunes' rematch with Juliana Pena. These are dominant fights over 5 rounds. Yes, you might get 50-45s in a number of different fights, but not quite as dominant as this one. Now, I think the stats alone tell the story of this fight. 16 minutes of control time for Zhang Weili. Well, first of all, the scorecards. 49-45, which I thought was very, very harsh on Zhang Weili. I don't think she lost a round. I'm not sure what round it was that Nick Mahmoud scored for Amanda Lemos. 50-44 by Chris Lee and 50-43 by Sal D'Amato. Now, this is just going off the stats that are on the UFC website. Zhang Weili is credited with 16 minutes and 7 seconds control time, a single knockdown. Obviously, that came in the final round. 296 total strikes and 163 significant strikes. 6 of 7 takedowns were also landed. Amanda Lemos, comparing comparing that to Zhang Weili, no knockdowns, 34 seconds of control time, no takedowns attempted, so no takedowns landed. She had 2 submission attempts. That sub attempt in the first round was certainly close, but to no avail, unfortunately for Lemos. 29 strikes landed. So take into account that Zhang Weili landed 296 strikes. Amanda Lemos landed 29. Don't get me wrong, some of those strikes were powerful strikes that I wouldn't say rocked Weili Zhang, but certainly sort of pricked her ears up a little bit. But if you just look at the stats for round one, 44 significant or 74 total strikes landed by Zhang Weili, 2 landed by Amanda Lemos. The final round, 114 strikes landed by Zhang Weili, 1 landed by Amanda Lemos. There's not an awful lot for me to say on this fight. I think what I can say is that we've seen a massive transition in the game of Zhang Weili to be more wrestling heavy, and I think she looked at doing that against Rose Namajunas in their rematch. It didn't quite pay off in that one. Of course, we know we didn't see it too much against Joanna Jędrzejczyk when Zhang Weili rematched her after that Rose Namajunas loss. You know, she did take her down, you know, three times, 3 of 6 according to UFC stats, and we saw much more defensive wrestling and against Carla Esparza and far, you know, more intelligent ground game. Now, Zhang Weili landed 6 or 7 takedowns in this one, and it was just pure domination. She didn't ever let Amanda Lemos even find her range. You know, like I say, Lemos landed 24 significant strikes. That's less than 5 strikes a round on average. It's damning to compare, you know, to think about how who's going to be next for Zhang Weili. I think logically it's Yang Xiaonan. But I don't see how anybody else beats it. You know, Rose Namajunas is moving up in weight to face Manon Fiorot at UFC Paris. You've got Tatiana Suarez, who's definitely a potential, but I don't see how anyone beats Weili Zhang at the moment. I just don't. I can't picture it at the moment. Of course, I think it does happen eventually. You know, whether she goes up in weight to compete against either Shevchenko or Grasso, whoever champion after their fight next month. But on the form that she showed this past weekend, no one beats Zhang Weili. She cemented herself as the pound-for-pound best female on the planet. Give or take maybe Larissa Pacheco, who picked up a big 15 second knockout this weekend at PFL. But as far as the UFC is concerned, she's the pound-for-pound number one. There's no denying that. There's no denying that she's the best women's 115 fighter in the world, which for me, there is a debate when we go on to talk about the main event. The main event is the one that's got all the headlines. Sean O'Malley knocks out Aljamain Sterling, round 2. He lands a sweet counter right hand. You know, step back counter, lands the right hand, and finishes it off with ground and pound. Was it an early stoppage? I've watched it a good few times. I think the stoppage is early, but Aljamain Sterling can't turn his back on his opponent, even if he is looking to get back to his feet. And I don't think Aljo protested the stoppage too much. I know Merab was straight on Twitter or Instagram or one of the social medias protesting the stoppage, and I don't really think, you know, Aljamain Sterling has protested it too much. Maybe when he goes back in hindsight and watches it, but I think he knows how hard he was hit by Sean O'Malley. And for me, it was only a matter of time. If he would have been able to scramble back to his feet, I think it was that knockdown was certainly the beginning of the end for Sean O'Malley to lift the bantamweight title. It's tough for Aljamain Sterling because the crowd really were on his back, and I've never understand that the hate for Aljamain Sterling, but you know, that's a discussion for another day. But he's not adored by the UFC fans. He's not, I don't think, too adored by Dana White and co. So I cannot see him getting a title shot, an immediate rematch. Does he deserve an immediate rematch? Perhaps, but I think the division's going to just pass him by now. He was on a 9-fight winning streak. I think this one was to make it 10. It was his fifth straight UFC title fight, second straight pay-per-view main event. Obviously, he beats Henry Cejudo last time out, but Sean O'Malley just puts on a clinic in this one. Really, the first round was certainly close, but the second round, as Sean O'Malley alluded to, there's no need to score it because Sean O'Malley knocks out Aljamain Sterling now. That's only the second time that Aljo's ever been finished in his, I think it's in his professional, certainly in his UFC career. And he's never been sort of caught and knocked out clean like the way that O'Malley knocked him out. Yeah, he's got 2 knockout losses, one to Sean O'Malley, and obviously that knee by Marlon Moraes. I wouldn't say fluky because he threw the strike and it landed, but it's hard to say that Marlon Moraes meant to land that knee just quite as flush as he did on Aljamain Sterling. But for Sean O'Malley, I think it breathes a breath of fresh air to the division. If you look at the rankings now, you'll have Sean O'Malley champion, probably Aljo ranked number 1. Then you've got Merab, fresh fight, Henry Cejudo, fresh fight, Corey Sandhagen, fresh fight. The Petty Yan rematch, I don't think anyone would turn their nose up at that because that was such a good fight. Marlon Chito Vera, they've got history. Those 2 guys have got an awful lot of history. Marlon obviously being the only person to hand Sean O'Malley a professional loss. That's kind of the fight I think that the UFC might trend towards. But Marlon's coming off just a single loss. A single win. For me, the fight's Merab. He deserves to fight more than anything. He would have never fought his teammate and his good friend Aljamain Sterling for the belt. But now that Aljo doesn't hold the belt, sign Merab up. And for me as well, this card really spoke volumes for a changing of the guard in the UFC. You've got Ian Garry beating the old sort of veteran in Neil Magny. Ian Garry is going to be an absolutely humongous megastar if he can just keep going. If he can keep going, he'll be an absolutely massive megastar. And Sean O'Malley, if he can just keep going, he will be an absolutely humongous, massive megastar. He already is a massive, he already is a pay-per-view headliner. But if he can, just keep doing what he's doing, he will be one of, I think, sort of maybe not Conor levels, maybe not Ronda levels, probably not Brock Lesnar levels, but he will transition over into being a potential, we're talking like an Israel Adesanya level star for the UFC. And there's an iconic picture that's flying about on Twitter. I'll try and repost it onto the MMA MMASucka YouTube channel. The MMASucka Twitter, because it's an iconic picture of Sean O'Malley walking off with the word sugar in pink. He's obviously got the pink hair, and now Aljamain Sterling in a heap on the floor. It's iconic, and it'll go down in history. He's also got a fan-friendly style, as big a star as people think Khabib might have been. He would have been a far bigger sort of fan-friendly guy if he didn't wrestle. I know that's his bread and butter. I know that's his style. I know it's a legitimate fighting style. But Sean O'Malley's stand-up, counter-striking, brash bravado, the hair, the tattoos, the way he talks online, it makes him a megastar. And he's got the fighting style to back it up. Like I say, the hands down, the counter-striking, the preferential, the preferred style to keep things on the feet. He's going to be a megastar, and he deserves it. He's a really good fighter, but he just has to get past Merab, because I genuinely think that Merab is the best bantamweight in the world, who, he just doesn't hold the belt at the moment. So that's my full sort of roundup reaction to UFC 292. I'm going to briefly just preview what's on this weekend. I don't really like doing previews because we can talk about a fight all we want, but a lot of the time it's much better for me, and in my opinion, for sort of podcasters like myself and analysis like I like to think that I am, to break down a fight after the fact, break down Sean O'Malley's step back right hand, break down, the favorite and, arguably the best, in my personal opinion, breakdown that I've ever done is of Leon Edwards' head kick. It was actually a year ago today, I believe. What's today? The 23rd, a year ago today, that Leon Edwards landed that infamous head kick on Kamaru Usman. It was a year ago today that I attended the PFL's semi-final tournament in London's Copper Box Arena as media for MMASucka. I'm still eternally grateful for that. That was one of the most fun nights of my life, getting to kick back with, the likes of Brendan Loughnane and, having a conversation with Kayla Harrison backstage, one of the nicest people that I've ever, had the pleasure of meeting, and just genuine people. So, but going back to my original point, I'm not a huge fan of previews. I will preview, obviously, this weekend to get you guys to, get a little bit hyped for it, but I'd much rather do a review and a breakdown after the fact. But, with that being said, looking ahead to this weekend, we've got Holloway versus Korean Zombie. For me, it's the power of Korean Zombie versus the output of Max Holloway. What Max Holloway are we going to see in there? Probably the same one as we saw in there against Arnold Allen. High output, high volume, high intensity, clever striking. He'll get caught, but he'll probably be able to brush it off. And for me, what Korean Zombie are we going to see in there? It's over a year now since we last saw him. We last saw him in the title fight against Alexander Volkanovski when he was, he was TKO'd on his feet because he just couldn't take any more punishment. Don't really know what this fight does for the division, if I'm honest. I don't quite understand it. The featherweight division goes Volkanovski, of course, king of the castle, as it were. Max Holloway 1, Yair Rodriguez 2, Brian Ortega 3. What's happening with Brian Ortega? Arnold Allen 4. You're trying to tell me that Ilia Topuria wouldn't have taken the Max Holloway fight? Josh Emmett would have taken the Max Holloway fight? Calvin Kattar would have liked a rematch with Max Holloway? All of these guys, without a doubt. But they go down to number 8, Chan Sung Jung, just because it's a fresh fight. This is in, I believe it's in Singapore, so, Chan Sung Jung will have a lot of support. But for me, I don't really understand this fight, but it is what it is. Should be a fun fight. I'm picking Max Holloway by unanimous decision, even possibly by late stoppage, depending on what Korean Zombie looks like, and how he kind of handles that bounce back loss. Let's not forget that Zombie's taken a lot of damage in his time, and he's 36 now. He's 36 now. So with that being said, Max has taken a lot of damage. Can he still take one on the whiskers like he used to? We'll have to wait for Saturday night to see. Co-main event, Anthony Smith versus Ryan Spann. It's a loser leaves sort of contention fight. Anthony Smith coming off the 2 straight losses to Ankalaev and then to Johnny Walker last time out. Ryan Spann seemed to be on a little bit of a run. Beat Ion Kutalaba, he beat Dominic Reyes, but then he lost last time out to Nikita Krylov. It's a loser leaves contention kind of fight. We've got the return of Giga Chikadze versus Alex Caceres. Chikadze was obviously the sort of next top guy. He'd finished a lot of guys. He finished Jamie Simmons, finished Cub Swanson, finished Edson Barboza, and then was, for want of a better word, exposed against Calvin Kattar as a one-dimensional striker. He returns this weekend against Alex Caceres. It's going to be a stand-up battle. I think Chikadze is going to get it done. But for me, the most important fight on the card, without a doubt, this should have been a fight night headliner. Erin Blanchfield versus Talia Santos. Now, let's not forget Talia Santos. This was the fight that was scheduled for Erin Blanchfield's last fight. So these two women have prepared for each other. Talia Santos coming off a split decision loss to Valentina Shevchenko, where she put in a phenomenal performance, and many thought that she won that fight. Erin Blanchfield is, in my eyes, probably should have been the next person to compete for the title. She's currently riding an 8-fight winning streak. In the UFC, she beat Sarah Alpha by decision. She beat Miranda Maverick by decision, which isn't an easy thing to do. She beat JJ Aldrich by submission. She Kimura'd Molly McCann in New York, if you remember. Then last time out, she dominated Jessica Andrade for as long as that fight lasted, finishing the second round in her first main event. This should have been a main event. It's not. It is what it is. It's a 3-round fight at flyweight. I think it's going to be an absolutely phenomenal knock. And, the winner of this fight really has a chance to to compete against either Grasso or Shevchenko when when the winner of that sort of comes to light after they fight next month. The only other thing to really look ahead to, in my eyes, for this weekend is in Poland. The return of arguably the pound for pound number one fighter in the world of boxing, Alexander Usyk. He's obviously coming off the two dominant displays against Anthony Joshua to take on Daniel Dubois. I believe he's the WBO mandatory. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I believe he is. He bounced back from that devastating loss to Joe Joyce, to beat Bogdan Dinu, to beat Joe Casamano, to beat Trevor Bryan, to beat Kevin Lorena. I think Usyk dances around Daniel Dubois, and I think Daniel Dubois learns an awful lot from this fight. But I do think, Usyk just dances around Daniel Dubois. Daniel Dubois is 25 years old. He's already got that loss on his record to Joe Joyce. But I just think his style lends itself to Usyk just popping and moving. Daniel Dubois, I think, is a lot more, well, maybe not even a lot more, but he's more powerful than Anthony Joshua. But I don't think he's as quick, and I don't think he's as intelligent a striker, a boxer as Anthony Joshua. I can see Alexander Usyk just cruising to victory, or even stopping Daniel Dubois late. But strange things have happened. I think Daniel Dubois does, he hits so hard that of course he's got a chance, but I'm not sure how that's going to play out. We've got PFL 9 this weekend as well. This probably Friday night card. Yeah, Wednesday night card. We've got the PFL playoffs on Wednesday. Interesting. Clay Collard versus Shane Burgos is the main event. The co-main event is last year's winner, Oliver Aubin-Mercier, taking on Bruno Miranda. Carlos Leal versus Sabri Sai. Magomed Kerimov versus Solomon Renfro is also on the main card. Baguio Ali Walsh is on this card. That's pretty much the ones to look out for. We've got the girls that I don't think made it out of the Michelle Montague. She didn't get her. She won a contract, I believe, on the Challenger Series. So the Australian, that'll be fun to watch. But like I say, it's all about UFC 292 today. Phenomenal performances up and down the card, mainly in the two title fights. But Ian Garry has arrived now, and he deserves it. He's got the skill, and he's got the will, and he's got the way, and he's got the gift of the gab, as it were, the personality to be a real megastar. But this week's sort of megastar is Sean O'Malley, without a doubt. So yeah, that's UFC 292 in a nutshell. Like I say, I'm still getting used to doing these podcasts on my own at the moment, so thank you for bearing with me. And when I get into a little bit more of a routine, I'm gonna bring in different, maybe my opinion on a few fight announcements. But it's really difficult when you've got a card as good as UFC 292. Me and Tim always said that we wanted to bring in different elements to the show, but when there's so much to talk about, there's so much to talk about. So like I say, thank you for listening. Thank you for sticking by me. Drop us a like on YouTube. It'll really help me out. I'm on Apple Podcasts and Spotify as well. I think MMASucka Podcast on both of those platforms, and we're on Twitter at MMASucka, on Instagram at MMASucka. I think we're now on TikTok at MMASucka as well. So just go and drop us all a follow. I'm on Twitter at Frazer Krohn MMA. Drop me a follow on there and continue on the conversation. But until next week, guys, thank you very much. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, if you're just an audio viewer. But I appreciate all your time. Take it easy.